Greetings, minions, I am your humble narrator, SideWaysThinker, and I'm just here with another episode of that there Enigmatic Entity, a series in which I look at some of the more uncanny video game characters. This week I'm discussing one of the most mysterious and well-known characters in gaming, the G.
This is Max Headroom. Max Headroom.
I'm entirely cheating. The character we'll be discussing is certainly uncanny. Indeed, he is a curious relic of the time in which he was popular. But apart from a small and unpopular video game on the British home computer systems of the time, he is not a video game character. Rather, he is a TV personality. With no more wittering on, let's get on to it. This time, I'm talking about Max Headroom. For the unaware, Max Headroom was an artificial intelligence and computer-generated TV host created for British television. He first appeared in the short TV movie Max Headroom 20 Minutes into the Future, which detailed his origins and creation, but we'll discuss those later in the video. After the relative success of the short film, the character was picked up by Channel 4 for the Max Headroom show, in which he acted as a host for a series of music videos.
What I want to know is, why aren't more people inventing useful things, like Mr. Bobby Ashimura, who wins our Max Headroom Product of the Month award for coming up with a little attachment you plug into your TV and it warns you that the commercial break is coming by automatically switching off your set for 5 seconds. And here to demonstrate it for us is Mr. Ashimura himself.
Okay, Bob, take it away.
And later, the Max Talking Headroom Show, a program with a larger budget and more Max Headroom than music video. Through the 80s, he appeared in a number of other roles, an example of these being as a spokesperson for New Coke for some time. Also, the short film from which Max Headroom came was adapted into a 2-series dystopian sci-fi drama show. He then had an American show by the name of the original Max Talking Headroom Show. Outside of the 80s, Max Headroom essentially didn't exist, although he did make a brief appearance on British TV screens in the late 2000s in a series of Channel 4 advertisements when the digital switchover occurred. The digital switchover being when almost all TV signals in the UK went from analogue to digital.
I was big once. Back in the 80s, I was bigger than big.
Yeah, I know.
Bigger than shares. Years into the future, Channel 4 is making a big deal about digital TV. I told them one day the public will enjoy multi-channel, multi-platform viewing with a range of channels to suit the most diverse tastes. But did they listen? Did they? Hell?
The character himself was known for a few trademark things, the first and most obvious of which being his odd, computer-generated appearance. He appeared as a white male with large shoulders in a shiny black suit, with absurd facial proportions and hair slicked back so much it looked as if it was glued onto his scalp. His appearance is a deliberate exaggeration of things that were perceived as manly at the time, a strong jaw and strong cheekbones. He also had unpleasantly pale blue eyes, though these were often hidden behind a pair of sunglasses which, along with his suit, in time became a trademark of Max's. The computer-generated concept was only a gimmick, and for a lot of his run of popularity, nothing about him, or the way he appeared, was computerized. Another well-known element of the Max Headroom personality was his unusual speech pattern, often remarked on by people interviewing him as a stutter, though which he describes as a slight verbal hesitancy.
You have, I don't know, kind of a slight speech, you have an interesting speech pattern there. Kind of a stutter, I guess.
Touching on areas? Why don't you ever stand up? Is it because you've caught a vital organ in the top drawer? Stutter! Isn't that a rather harsh way, Davy Doo, to describe a slight verbal hesitancy? I mean, come on, big fellow, we all have our hereditary idiosyncrasies, and mine's been able to say long words without stuttering.
His speech pattern is alarmingly chaotic, his voice shifting pitch up and down, seemingly at random, with himself on occasion being stuck in a loop, repeating certain words or sounds over and over again, while he appears to glitch around the screen, this being most apparent when he says his own name. As far as I can tell, the exact reason for this is never given, but I like to think that the, as it were, law reason for this is simply that computers from the 80s couldn't take an AI as powerful as Max Headroom, so he glitches out constantly as the computers attempt to keep up. Despite the reputation as a computer-generated character, Max Headroom himself was simply the actor Matt Frewer under a large amount of makeup. The backgrounds were, for quite some time, cel-shaded images, rather than computer-generated images, and the voice effect was achieved in his shows with relative ease via editing, and in live performances with the use of a harmonizer. The character's origins are, as previously mentioned, explained in both the short film, 20 Minutes into the Future, and the TV show, Max Headroom. The story goes like this. In a dystopian future in which it seems as if, for all intents and purposes, the government has broken down and the world is at the mercy of huge megacorporations, a reporter by the name of Edison Carter, played by Matt Frewer, works for Network 23, one of the more popular television networks. He reports on a story relating to a death caused by something called a blipvert. 30-second adverts condensed into 3-second flashes of imagery that somehow cause certain people to explode in their chairs. Despite the wishes of the heads of Network 23, who want to keep the story under wraps so they can keep using blipverts, Edison looks into the events. While investigating, he is found and pursued out of the Network 23 HQ by its security force. In an effort to escape, he steals a motorcycle and attempts to ride out of the building, only to be surprised by a ramp suddenly lifting from the ground. He is thrown from his motorcycle and slams into a lowering traffic barrier. The last thing he sees before impact is the Max Headroom warning on the traffic barrier. His brain is then scanned by the child genius behind much of Network 23's technology, and from the scan is created the AI, Max Headroom. His appearance, personality, and memory scramble due to the scan being taken while Edison was suffering from a head wound. Max, rather than being an exact copy of Edison, takes many of his memories and much of his personality and dials it up to 11, while also losing all of Edison's capacity for self-control. Max Headroom proves to be a hit with the audience of the post-apocalyptic future, and as such is used by Network 23 to host their shows. Throughout the TV series, once Edison recovers, he and Max Headroom help each other out, Max often using his nature as a highly advanced AI to help alter and break into the systems that Edison would otherwise be completely removed from, as well as just appearing as the comic relief for the series. Unfortunately, beyond this, there isn't really much to talk about in regards to Max Headroom's background. So I think we'll close up this episode with a few examples of trivia regarding Max Headroom. First, and strangest of all, Max Headroom won a BAFTA in 1987 for, of all things, CGI. At this point, much of the background work in the Max Headroom videos was still being done by cel shading, and they won specifically for Max himself. This caused something of a stir due to Max being almost entirely practical effects. The closest thing to a computer effect involved in the character being the voice and frame manipulations used to cause the glitching effects. Another trivia note is that the actor, Matt Frewer, deeply disliked playing Max due to the sheer amount of makeup he had to wear in the role. In a related point, Max was often seen wearing a pair of sunglasses that hid his eyes completely. He didn't wear them consistently, and curiously, they were a functional adornment rather than a stylistic one. Max's eyes are of a creepy pale blue colour, this effect being achieved by a particular form of contact lenses that were both large and very unpleasant to wear. As such, they regularly caused eye damage to Matt Frewer. He wore the glasses whenever he was recovering from the eye damage caused by the contact lenses, only to have to return to the lenses once his eyes had healed. Oh, and a final note of trivia. The en masse changing of Max Headroom signs to maximum height in the UK and the US is chalked up by some to Max Headroom's popularity. Well, that's all we have time for today, I'm afraid. I know some of you are probably wondering why I didn't mention the Max Headroom incident, when that loon in a Max Headroom mask hijacked a TV station for a minute or so. I didn't mention it because, frankly, most people will already know about the Max Headroom incident, and will think of the Max Headroom incident when they hear any mention of Max Headroom, before they think of Max Headroom. It's a bit of a shame to me that he's better remembered as a loon wearing a mask than as the actual character. But oddly, in the last few years, references to him have been popping up in pop culture again, and apparently there are talks of bringing him back with Matt Frewer playing him again. It's a bit of a stretch, but if it happens, I'll watch it. Anyway, that's going to have to be all from me for now. I've been your humble narrator, SideWaysThinker, and as always, keep calm and carry on. Good day.
Who was it said that observing the United States is like watching an epic movie? Oscar Wilde?
Woody Allen?
Max Headroom. Just think, they've got an actor for a president, economic advisors called projectionists. Even their latest defense strategy is named after a film. Star Wars. And why pick on that one? Why not something gentler, like Kramer versus Kramer? And of course, everywhere in the world to them is just a theater of operations, except when they're fighting in it. And then it's a theater of war.
Well, I hope you enjoyed watching that video as much as I enjoyed making it. Well, I say that, I could have been having a really shitty day when I recorded that. You can't tell, and I certainly can't. Pre-recorded message and all that. Anyway, just here to say that I have a Twitter account that you can follow if you want occasional updates of random thoughts from me, and that if you're feeling generous, feel free to donate to my Patreon campaign. Every penny donated there makes life easier for me generally and slowly goes towards me getting a better gaming PC. Well, that's that. It's over. Leave. Now. Now!
Do not seek the Sideways Thinker. Do not seek the Pardoner.